بسم الله. نعم صلى الله على رسول الله. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Previous week we were going through the masail, the rulings of when a well has, or when najasa, impurity or impurities have fallen into a well. So what would the rulings be? How would the water become clean? And this is only in the scenario where the water is not considered excessive. I mean, this is only in the scenario when the water is excessive. If it's less than excessive, then the water is unclean. One cannot use that water. When it is excessive, then it is a different matter altogether. And this is why these texts, what they do is that they explain how the well, which has ma kathir, which has excessive water, how it should be cleaned, how it will achieve purity. Moving on, ma la yufsidul ma. So those things which do not make fasid, which do not make impure, the well water, are bikhur'i hammamin. So the feces of the bird, so the droppings of the pigeons, birds, they don't ruin well water. So because the reason behind that is because it's permissible to eat them. Right? It's permissible to eat pigeons. It's permissible to eat certain birds. So those birds which are permissible for consumption, their droppings will not render the well water as impure. And there's a hadith where Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, once some bird, it passed feces on his hands, and he just wiped it. He didn't wash it. So what this means is that this will not make impure the well water. And this is specific only to those birds that are permissible for consumption, meaning that predatory birds, they're excluded from this. Predatory birds such as eagles, falcons, this is excluded. Okay. وَلَا بِمَوْتِ مَا لَا دَمَ لَهُ فِيهِ كَسَمَكٍ وَضِفْدَعٍ وَحَيْوَانٍ مَاءٍ وَبَقٍ وَذُبَابٍ وَزُنْبُولٍ وَأَقْرَبٍ. Okay. So also what will not spoil the well water is that if an animal or an insect doesn't have blood flowing through its body, then it dying in the water, it's not going to make the water impure. So fish that have died in the water, any kind of animal that lives in the sea, it's not going to render the water impure. Mosquitoes, flies, wasps, scorpions, anything of similar nature that doesn't have flowing blood. If it dies inside a body of water, then that water is still considered as pure. That water will be considered as pure because what is taken into consideration is flowing blood. That is what is taken into consideration, flowing blood. Okay. وَلَا بِوُقُوعِ آدَمِيٍّ وَمَا يُؤْكَلُ لَحْمُهُ إِذَا خَرَجَ حَيًّا وَلَمْ يَكُنْ على بدنه نجاسة. Okay. Also, what other things will not spoil, will not render the water impure? Okay. So the water will not be considered impure if, for example, a human falls into the well, or an animal which is permissible for consumption falls into the well, right? But provided that it comes out alive, provided that the animal comes out alive and there is no najasa, there is no impurity on the bottom, on the animal, on the body of the animal when it fell in. Right? So that's what's going to be taken into consideration. Also, the well is not going to be considered as najas, as impure, if the mule or a donkey falls in, or even if a predatory bird falls in, but they have to come out alive. They have to come out alive. If they come out alive, then that water will not be rendered as impure. And this is the most correct opinion. Okay. Number 4, ولا بوقوع بغل ولا بوقوع بغل وحمار وصباة ووحش في الصحيح وإن وصل اللعاب الواقع إلى الماء أخذ حكمه. Okay. So he's mentioned that وَإِنْ وَصَلَ اللُّعَابُ الْوَاقِعِ إِلَى الْمَاءِ أَخَذَ حُكْمَهُ. That if the saliva of the animal, if it touches the water, then the water is going to be judged according to the animal. Meaning that if the saliva of a sheep, right, the saliva of sheep is pure, it's considered pure, then the water, it's going to take the hukum. It's going to, whatever the hukum, whatever the ruling of the saliva of the sheep is, that's going to be the ruling of the water. So the saliva of the sheep, it's pure. So the water too is going to be pure. But if the saliva of a dog touches the water, then we are going to rule, the ruling is going to be, it's going to be based on the saliva of the dog. So the saliva of the dog, according to the vast majority of the schools, what is it? It is impure. It is impure. It is najas. That means that the water too is going to be impure, right? And it is not permissible to use that water to achieve any kind of purity. So the water is going to be ruled based on the animals. We have to ascertain what kind of animal it is. And then once we have ascertained the animal, then we have to identify that, okay, is the saliva of that animal pure or impure? If pure, then the water is going to be pure. If impure, then the water is going to be impure. Okay. ووجود حيوان ميت فيها ينجسها من يوم وليلة. Okay. Now, if a dead animal, right? People live in the village, right? If a dead animal is in the water, and no one has any idea how long that animal has been in there. Okay, so they just find a dead animal. Right? Some people living in the village or rural areas where there's well water over here in upstate New York, they come across, right? They come across a well, people are using it, and they take out a bucket, and lo and behold, there's a dead animal there. There's a dead animal in that bucket. Okay, so what should you do? People have been using this water for purity. They've been using this water for, laundering their clothing and doing wudu and doing ghusl. Okay, what should be done? Okay. So the ruling is that water will be considered impure for 1 day and 1 night, which means what? That whoever has performed wudu using that water, whoever has performed ghusl using that water, and has performed prayers, with that wudu and that ghusl, then those prayers for 1 day and night must be repeated. Those prayers for 1 day and 1 night must be repeated. Okay. وَمُنْتَفِخٍ مِنْ ثَلَاثِ أَيَّامٍ وَلَيَالِيهَا إِن لَمْ يُعْلَمْ وَقْتُ وُقُوعِهِ. Okay, let's say a person is living upstate New York using well water, right? And he takes out a bucket and he finds an animal that's bloated, right? Finds an animal that's inflated. Right? So what should he do? So now the impurity of the water will no longer be 1 day and 1 night. It will be 3 days and 3 nights, because nobody knows. No one knows when this animal has fallen in. Right? So no one has any idea when this animal has fallen in. It just came out and it's all inflated. Right? It's bloated, which means that it must be in the well for quite a long time. So that means that people, they will have to redo their prayers for 3 days and 3 nights, right? Provided that they use this water for wudu and for ghusl or for any kind of purity. Same thing, if they use that water, for laundering, then it's going to, then those water, that clothing will need to be re-washed. That clothing will have to be re-washed. So these are the rulings of the well. Next week, inshallah, we will continue فصل في الاستنجاء وما يجب تقديمه على الوضوء. Istinja, and that which is required prior to wudu. We will start a new chapter, inshallah. Yes.
Okay, these rules that you mentioned, these were all about wells, well water.
Well water, yes.
Okay, and you talked about this bird dropping.
Yes.
Like pigeon or some on another bird. How someone gonna know like this dropping belongs to which bird or what kind of bird?
It would be based on what kind of birds are living in the area. Woodpeckers, I mean, up here, what do we have? We have woodpeckers, we have ducks, we have geese. So it would be based on ghalabatul dhann. It would be based on our dominant
experience.
Yes, that's what it would be based on.
Nice question.
It's a good question.
So when you see the dead animal, you don't know how long it's been there.
Yes.
So you remove the animal,
Yes.
and the water you need to drain the water.
Yeah.
Drain the water.
Yeah. Water has to be. Yeah. It has to be taken out. All of it.
You do the qada, day, full day.
Yes. Qada. Qada for 3 days.
Previous day.
Yep. So qada for 15 prayers, or whenever the animal was identified.
No, 1 day, 1 night, one day, 1 night.
Yeah. So if it's inflated, if the animal is inflated, then 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days and 3 nights. And if it was not inflated, then 1 day, 1 night. So it's going to be either 5 prayers or 15 prayers, depending on.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about if you know when the animal fell, like so if you somebody passed by the water
Yes.
one day, let's say after Isha, and there was no animal, and next day after Maghrib he passed and there was an animal that is dead. He repeats only the prayers of. He repeats.
Was it bloated? Was it inflated?
But yesterday there was no animal.
Uh-huh.
And today there is an animal.
Yeah. So it all depends if it was inflated.
So let's say it's inflated.
Yeah. If it's inflated, then 3 days, because they could have missed it. The bucket may have missed it, because this is ma'ul kathir, right? Ma'un kathir.
It's ma'un kathir.
Yeah.
Talk about ma'un kathir.
Yeah. This is all ma'un kathir. Because if for example, if it's ma qalil, right? If it's ma qalil, then this is like a moot point at the beginning of the chapter. Look at the first. Take a look at the beginning of the chapter, where it discusses. تنزه البئر الصغيرة بوقوع النجاسة وإن قلت من غير الأرواث كقطرة دم أو خمر. All the water is going to be taken out from a small well if impurity falls in.
The small well is ma'un kathir.
No, small well is qalil, when the water is less.
Right. And here it's also
When the small quantity of water becomes impure.
here also it's not qalil, right? It's continuous.
Yes. No. Then yeah. So now وبوقوع خنزير ولو خرج حيا ولم يصب فمه الماء. This is talking about it's talking about ماء قليل.
Exactly.
It has to be taken out. The well has to be emptied.
Yeah. In
I had experience of that.
Yeah, if in a small well, impurity falls in, so even if the impurity is small, so a drop of blood or alcohol, then yeah, that small quantity of water becomes impure, even if it is not visible. Yeah, so all of these masail, they're based on a small quantity of water. Large quantity of water, this is not going to become impure.
So the water can be clean but may not be pak.
How so?
Like, in any case,
Yeah, it is not good.
like a water can be clean. Let's suppose there is an animal, but the water otherwise looks all good. It's not smelly. So
Yes.
a water can be clean, but it may not be pak.
Yes,
pak
according
for the
to
Muslim.
according to the criteria of Islamic law, it will not be considered as pure. It could be clean, right? So far as science is concerned, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's pure. It would be similar to, astronauts going up in space and, using the restroom there, and then the waste, it goes through a filtration process and it becomes water. But that water, according to the standards of the Sharia, it is not considered as pure, and it's not considered as something permissible for consumption. So it would have to go through the natural process, not scientific process. So this would be any type of water, so even the waste that goes through the sewers, it undergoes a scientific process, right? But for that, and then what they do is that they take that water and they dump it back into the reservoir. So that's a criteria that for that water to become clean according to the standards of the Sharia, it has to become part of a large body of water that the Sharia classifies as clean and pure.
So then what about the bottled water, which is not spring water?
So the bottled water over here, that's
If
from,
it is not spring water, there are two kind of waters in the bottles.
okay,
One is the spring water,
and one is
and
reverse
the other one is
reverse
from the
osmosis.
reservoirs.
No,
Yeah.
purified.
So reverse osmosis, is that the water that you're speaking of?
Yeah, from the reservoirs.
So if it's from the reservoir is considered as a large body of water. So it would not be an issue. If it's from the reservoir, then it's not an issue because it's a large body of water. Large body of water that's permissible to drink. It's permissible to drink a large body of water. The question arises when it's a small body of water, when it's less than 10 by 10. This is when these questions arise. So if it's a small quantity of water and any kind of impurity falls in, then it's going to be taken out.
So more in the case of, for example, the water tanks that we have in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So because there it's very common that something falls.
Yes. Yeah. So, for example, a mouse or a duck or any small animal
Yeah,
falls in,
yeah.
and I think it's 40 buckets or something would have to be taken out for that water to be clean.
When you drain the well, after something's dropped inside, do you need to be dry? The well needs to be dry before you fill up
No.
the water?
No,
As long as it's empty, that's it.
as long as it's empty. And even if the well, because there are many wells that just fill up afterwards, you just estimate. You estimate the volume of water.
Yeah, that's for the keep draining the
Yes.
water. But if it's not that kind of tank, whatever. So you don't need to wait for dry.
Yeah, no, you don't have to dry it or anything. Yeah, just the water.
But the najis, he said, must be out.
Yeah, the najasa has to come out. That usually will come out.
That's the first thing you do, take out the najasa.
See, all of these rules, they're built upon umum balwa. Umum balwa is like general affliction. General affliction. This is the term that is used in jurisprudence. This is a common term, actually used in Islamic jurisprudence. It's called umum balwa, general affliction. So when something afflicts people on a large scale, then the Sharia, it will try to give some type of dispensation. So for example, when it comes to wells, the water in the well, this is used by a huge population. If we just say, based on qiyas, based on analogy, that anything that falls into water, it will render the water as impure, and this is difficult. This is what we call general affliction. That okay, anytime any kind of najasa falls in, anytime impurity falls into a small body of water, okay, that's it. It's unclean. We can't use it. So you see how it becomes difficult for the people living in that region. So the Sharia, what it does, it provides dispensation. That okay, is there a way to make things easy for the people so that water still can be used? So this is what we call umum balba, general affliction, right? Because if we say that it's impermissible to use that water altogether, then everybody is afflicted. No one can use that water. So the Sharia is telling us, okay, you can still use that water, but these are the steps that you need to take. These are the measures you need to take for that well to become clean again. That either you take out all of the water, if impurity falls in. If an animal falls in, then you take out X amount of water. If a large animal falls in, take out this much water. If the droppings fall in, take out this much water. If this happens, then take out this much water. So this is all, it goes against analogy, right? And there's a reason why it goes against analogy. Because if we stayed in line with the analogy, then all forms of well water, they will be considered as impure if it's a small amount. And that's not feasible. That's not feasible because that's everybody's source. Right? So people who are living in the deserts, what is their water source? Their water source is the well. If you go to places like Mauritania, there are students there studying in makeshift tents, and their only source of water is a well. So if a snake falls in, or if a small animal falls in and it dies inside, right, then what are you going to do? If you're going to say that, it's najis, then they're gonna die of thirst. This is their only source. Even if you cover it, even if you take measures, animals find a way in. So the only way to do the only way is that the Sharia gives these allowances for a reason, and it's based off of a solid foundation called usul.
I want to connect this with our daily, life is washing machines,
Yes.
And then when we wash the clothes,
Yes.
especially the kids, they go to the bathroom, whatever, right? And on the clothes, sometimes, they maybe have najis, right?
Yes.
So then you wash using the washing machines, go in, go out, go in, go out, the water, right?
Yeah. So it goes through 3 cycles.
Yeah. So that's
clean.
That's considered same as this,
Yeah. This would be fine because it goes through 3 cycles. You're washing it 3 times. So once clothing has been washed 3 times, it's tahir.
Because when washing machines go in, fill up and then drain and fill in dry.
Yeah.
It's not dry, it's not dry.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's
Yep. That is the ruling. That if there's any najasa on the clothing, if there's any najasa, any impurity on the clothing, if that najasa is washed 3 times, then that clothing, it becomes pure. And that's generally what happens in a washing machine. The question might arise when it comes to dry cleaning, because the same solvents are used sometimes. Yeah, the solvents go through filtration system.
Very intelligent question. With that, thanks. من كنت تتعلق وفينا نقبل
الله يجزيك.
Show some fun.
سيدنا